Welcome to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast with Darren Mitchell. If you're a sales leader looking to take your leadership to a whole new level, then this is the podcast for you. We'll be exploring tips, techniques, and strategies to help you take your leadership to the exceptional level and allow you to enjoy more money, more meaning, and better sales results. Welcome back to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast on what is it's a beautiful day here in Victoria. Sun is out. It's what they call a typical spring day. And the man I'm speaking with today, he's living north of Melbourne in a beautiful place called Byron Bay. And Greg Cassar, I'm sure that the sun is shining and the waves are raging and it's a beautiful day in Byron. Welcome to the podcast.
Excellent, Darren. Thank you for having me. Yeah, it's a beautiful day here. Always nice to see winter going behind you, and then I think just people have more energy and more fun when the weather's getting warmer for sure.
Well, I was going to ask you, Greg, does it ever get cold in Byron?
It does, yeah. Like over winter, sort of, there's about 8 weeks or something to that effect, 8, 10 weeks where you're really not enjoying life as much. But in Australia, for those who don't know, if you go really far north, it's very hot and not very unpleasant. If you go really far south, it's unpleasant for different reasons. It's cold. Whereas I'm kind of in the middle and right on the coast, so it's very close to perfect climate. Yeah, and I've got a very active outdoor lifestyle, so it works well for that.
And you said before we press record, you do a lot of surfing. So you're out there daily.
Yeah, absolutely. So I try to, I think a lot of times we're like really busy all the time was what I try to do is like lifestyle by design and build an amazing life resume. So I figure out like, hey, what are we working for? What are we doing sales? What are we doing business for? It's really to lock aside value and to unlock time. And so that's why like even if I'm busy, if the waves are good, I'll get out there because otherwise like what am I hustling for? And like I'm trying to do it later down the track. So yeah, several times through the week, try to if the waves are good every day, I'll get out and do that, or I'll be on the e-bike or something like that for the full, trying to do lifestyle by design, but more fun,
Nice, nice.
more good vibes.
Awesome. So does that mean you're one of those guys that has the old, I don't know whether you run with an iPhone or a Samsung or a Google phone, but
So
you actually check the weather and the waves and the surf and all that sort of stuff?
every morning, that's the first thing that I do. Yeah, I'll look on the camera. We've got two travel companies that I'm a partner in. So I've got American business partners. These are like big e-commerce stores in the travel space. So I might talk to those guys, and then by like 7 in the morning, it's their afternoon. They're heading off, so I'll check the waves, get out there, and then get back to my desk and sort of hit it hard from there.
Love it, love it, mate. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation, and I love the fact that you talk about lifestyle by design because people that are particularly in corporate, they probably think they've got lifestyle by handcuffs because they're
Yeah.
tied to the requirements. But having the opportunity to create, I guess, a career, but then a lifestyle as part of that career to really give yourself some freedom and some choices is what we're all about. So you're a business coach. You're at a company called The Collective. You're also an investor, a growth hacker, and also you said biohacking as well.
Yeah, biohacking, just because I've just turned 50 and noticed that I'm aging, and so really working on how to slow down that aging process, which has been important. And then back to your point, both you and I have been in those corporate jobs, and I think like it's great, it's a means to an end, but there is higher levels of freedom out there, and that's where
Yeah.
like yeah, and I think you and I have similar stories where we've just worked on our own knowledge so that investing in yourself with things like this, but like learning more about sales, learning more about marketing, in my case, investing as well as business, and then mindset and emotional intelligence, like all these things. So working harder on the personal development than on the job to getting to the point where, and then I was able to build side hustles over time when I was in the day job, build side hustles, and then got to the point where the side hustles were big enough to then make the loop, the leap over. It all came down to actually one catalyst. I was doing like a sales and marketing and design job. I used to work for a company and design computer networks for banks and insurance companies and all
Yeah.
this kind of thing. They came to me my customer came to me. They needed what was called a SAN, a storage area network, basically a big chunk of disks. But what they wanted wasn't going to work for them like long term. And I showed them that, and I did $1 million upsell with this design. And the customer agreed, yes, it made good sense. they went for this $1 million upsell. They paid for it. And then my company was really excited that I was working for, and they said, "You're really going to go places in this company." They got everyone around the afternoon tea bench, and they had a little envelope there, and I thought it was going to be like for a car or a promotion. And they gave me a $200 Maya, gift card voucher, and I just made them $1 million. And that was kind of like, it really kicked me in the guts. But I realized at that time that sometimes like life happens for you, not to you. And I realized that one was the worst number in business. And I had one income stream and I was completely dependent on my employer. And it didn't really matter the results I got. It
Yeah.
wasn't going to affect my income that much. And so I just decided at that stage I was never going to be dependent on an employer again. And was roughly 8 to 10 weeks later, I was out and started a marketing agency and kind of, yeah, went on from there. So it's kind of interesting.
Wow. Well, I was going to ask you what was the catalyst, and you probably just described that. But
Yeah,
leading up to that, was there any things that sort of gave you the indication? Because you mentioned you'd been working on some side hustles as
yeah,
well. Were you doing side stuff before that, or was that really just the catalyst to say, you know what, I've brought in an extra $1 million, which is probably, yeah, whether it's top line revenue or bottom line profit, it's a
yeah,
huge chunk of change for the
yes,
organization, and the best they give me is a $200 My voucher. Thanks very
yes,
much.
yes. Which my
What's
wife
going
went and
on?
spent on clothes. So, but it was a blessing in disguise because I didn't have a lot saved up, but I did have some pipeline of work that people wanted some stuff done with websites, etc., and traffic and things. But I just backed myself and made it happen. But before that, I realized that the more I learned about sales and more I learned about marketing, the more money that I was going to make. And so while I was working in IT, I was a student of sales and marketing
Yeah.
constantly. And I got my first e-commerce store happening in the property education space. And that was kind of like how I learned Google Ads and learned online sales and that kind of thing. And then I was getting all these requests of people saying, "Hey, could you help me with that?" Because it was so early. And then when this happened to me, I was like, okay, well, now I've got to start listening to the universe was kind of giving me those messages, and then it just really kicked me in the guts. And then from there, yeah, been self-employed and running my own show ever since.
Wow. And so you mentioned also, Greg, a lot about self-development, personal development, and I see behind you I must say, mate, your bookshelf is very similar to my bookshelf, and you can't you can't. I've actually behind my sign here, in my banner, I've got a bookshelf that I made, and it's filled with books. But I've got probably you've got one, two, three, four, about 7 or 8 uh,
Yeah,
columns of books
yeah, nine,
stacked
yeah.
horizontally. I reckon I've got about six that are not in my bookshelf. So there is a man after my own heart in terms of
And
his
success
bookshelf
leaves
setup.
success leaves clues though. So, you and I have both achieved a higher level of success and freedom than most. And what are we doing? We're constant students. You
Yeah.
can never say you've learned it all. Just keep going.
So with that, I'd love to pick your brain a little bit about your experience in corporate, and I guess the marrying up of the personal development and taking responsibility for your own career and your own development as distinct from the company providing you with this development. Because I come up with a lot of organizations that we go in and we do sales programs, we do coaching and all that
Yes.
sort of stuff. But a lot of the individuals don't take the initiative themselves to take
Yeah.
charge of their own professional or personal development. What do you say to those people?
Yeah, you're really hitting on a good point here because I think you don't ever want to be dependent on someone else to provide that for you. It's great if you can get it from the company, but you and I both took similar paths of no one's going to save me but me. So, like, I was a constant student of buying this course, being on that webinar, buying this book, getting this info program. And it was by learning that sales and marketing and the mindset and all that off my own bat, the personal development, that was what was kept getting me pay rises, and then that was what ultimately gave me the freedom. It
Mm.
wasn't the courses that someone else put me on.
But it's so interesting that and I'm not being disparaging in any way, shape, or form to people who are in corporates, because not everybody, I
Yeah,
guess, has the ability to go out and do their own thing,
agreed.
nor should they, right?
Yeah,
So we need to have people that are in businesses. But It's fascinating the number of people that just expect the company or their sales manager or somebody within the business to take care of their own development
Yeah.
and feed them and don't take initiative themselves. It's just staggering.
Absolutely. Yeah. And one of the things you and I were talking about before the call as well was like building wealth.
Mm,
Uh, and so you've read Cash Flow Quadrant, Robert Kiyosaki. You
yep.
know, it teaches in that, for those who don't know, that there's four main ways you can build wealth. And so you can be an employee, a self-employed, a business owner, or an investor. And
Mm,
then but you can be an employee who's also an investor, or self-employed who's also an investor. But the best is to be a business owner who's also an investor, and that's what nearly all billionaires are.
yeah.
So I think one of the keys for those people who are employees, the personal development will continue to help you to make more. But then if you can add the I quadrant, add the investing, then I think that is really the fast track. Because what I've learned over the years was that I needed a combination of both cash flow, so like for example, to pay your bills, build up a reserve, live your lifestyle, that kind of thing, but then
Yeah.
also over time to build the net worth. So what's the
Yeah.
big golden goose? And it was really when I got focused on, and this is one of those things, Darren, where like sometimes to know and not to do is not to know. So I knew all along that I needed to be investing, even back when I was doing, IT and marketing and sales jobs, but I wasn't doing it. So, but when I really like got the aha and then started doing it, that was when my life changed and I unlocked another level of freedom. So I think it doesn't matter what we're doing. Everyone spends a lot of time focusing on whether it's their career, their profession, business, sales, marketing. I've found as I've got older, spending just as much time learning the investing side has actually really made more difference as far as like unlocking freedom, especially as I'm getting older.
And through that process, Greg, you mentioned before that you got the $200 My voucher for the
Yes.
extra $1 million, but the work that you did on yourself and I guess the education that you developed in terms of reading the books and going to the webinars, seminars, and probably getting coaching along the way as well.
Yes.
Do you think that gave you the confidence to say, hey, the world is so big out there, there's not just one way to actually skin a cat, for want of a better term. I've got to have some options and I've got to have some diversity and some choices because there's lots of very famous people that talk a lot about multiple streams of income. And as you rightly said, the billionaires of the world and certainly the multimillionaires, all of them have multiple sources of income where they don't just rely on one source, but it starts from somewhere. So
Yeah.
was it like a tangible thing? Did you have people within your corner who suggested, "Hey, Greg, you need to start to think about this"? Was it people that you saw within your environment, or did it just happen organically?
I was doing like learning the right stuff to know that I needed multiple streams of income. I call it a multi-leg stool, so that each income is like a leg of the stool. Because if you've only got one and then that leg gets taken out, then obviously, it all comes to naught. And that really hit home for me as well during COVID, because I mentioned like we've got two big e-commerce stores in the US which do travel deals. And
Mm,
then we were flying, we were doing really well and didn't do anything wrong. And then all of a sudden, no one could travel, no one could move. So it was a very, very stressful business to be in at the time. So by having multiple income streams, multiple legs of that stool, that was an awesome thing. Because I was working in corporate, I was able to just start doing some side hustles. In this case, it was a marketing agency, and then later on, it went into coaching and then other info products and all sorts of stuff. I think it's really about finding out what people are good at and
mm.
what they can get going, especially with in the days of AI and where things are now. Being just dependent on one income stream isn't great. I really do encourage people to learn something else, to get some kind of other side hustle happening so that all their eggs aren't in one basket.
Yeah. It's such an important thing because people can get stereotyped or pigeonholed into a certain genre or a certain niche or a certain role within a company. Just one question I was going to ask you because I'd love to
Yeah.
talk to you about AI and how AI you're using that today.
Yes.
But there's a lot of people that I speak with that are concerned about how AI is going to affect, I guess, their roles in their business.
Yes.
I'm of the opinion that AI is going to be a great augmentation of what organizations and certainly sales teams and leaders do. And if we don't embrace it, we're going to be left behind. How do you see in the work that you do, how do you see AI playing a part in the future? And is it something that we have to grapple with irrespective of whether we like it or not?
Agreed. I think my views are 100% consistent with yours, Darren, in that I think there's this concept called you can lean in or you can lean out. So lean out people means that, hey, that's not for me. Like I'm not interested in that. I'm not technical or any of that kind of stuff. But those people run the risk of being rolled by and replaced by AI. Or you can lean in and embrace it. And those people have more chance of like augmenting, getting more productivity, more efficiency, that kind of things with AI.
Mm.
So in our, like, for example, in our travel companies or with the portfolio companies we work with, we use AI for content creation, whether like all our image ads are all done by AI now. We used to have designers that do that.
Yeah.
A lot of the video, yeah, a lot of the video ads, all of our logic. So say, for example, even if I'm doing a Paris travel deal, I'll ask ChatGPT where are the buyers most likely to come from, and then it'll look up flight routes and everything, and then tell us that. So that allows us to just target so much better, all that kind of thing. And then like even I've got teenage kids, even with them, they're saying, hey, the workforce is difficult, and I saying I agree, and it's going to get harder and harder, but learn the AI skills. That's probably the most important thing people can do to
Mm.
future-proof themselves, so that they stand out in the workplace rather than get rolled by it.
It's so true. And I mean, there's lots of doomsdayers out there that talk about we're going to be replaced by the robots, and it's almost like back to Skynet in the Terminator. And
Yes.
the fact is, we've been using AI or we've been impacted by AI for many years. It's just that now it's a lot more prevalent because a lot more people are talking about it. But my message to business people and message to sales leaders in particular is if you're not using it, then you're going to be left behind.
Yes.
You've got to make sure, though, that you're not giving all of your power to it because it won't necessarily always give you the right information, but you've got to interrogate it. But you can also train it. You can
Yeah.
train it to be the voice of yourself based on all the content you've created, and that can give you a lot more choice and a lot more opportunity out there. So get on board.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Better to lean in than lean out on this one for sure. Crucial.
100%. 100%. So I'd love to talk about a lot of the businesses you've invested in. You do a lot of coaching. Um, Thinking about how do we help professionals build wealth? So people might be listening to this that are in a corporate role. They might be running a sales team. They might be a high performing individual contributor with aspirations to becoming, say, a sales leader within an organization, or in fact,
Yeah.
going out and doing their own thing. Now, we've got to put a caveat around this. This is not financial advice, so please check
Great.
your financial advisor and all that sort of stuff. But maybe some key principles that you've learned along your journey, or people that you've worked with who've applied certain principles that have helped them move away from the heavy reliance on perhaps the single role into diversification, into creating something that is I guess, a platform for wealth development. Because I mean, I know there's a lot of salespeople that make a lot of money, but they don't necessarily have a lot to show for it, right? Because
Mm.
they might have the flashy car, they might have everything that's under lease or whatever, but at their foundation, if that all crashed, they've got nothing underneath it. So
Yeah.
I know it's a very big general
Yeah,
question.
yeah. No, it's a great
It's almost
question.
like I've just given
Yeah.
you a blank slate, and
No, it's good. It's good. One thing I learned along the journey was that there was a fundamental difference between the rich and the poor. So the poor and the middle class will pay themselves last with time and money, and the rich will pay themselves first with time and money. So what do we mean by that? So the poor and the middle class will earn money like 10 grand a month or 100 grand a year, whatever it is, and then they'll pay all the bills, they'll do everything, and then if there's anything left over, they'll invest. Whereas what the rich will do is earn the money, then invest first, and then get by on what's left. It sounds like a small thing, but it's
Hmm.
one of those small hinges that swing a big door. So that's kind of like one of the first things is just be continually investing and put yourself first as far. Yeah, also with the pay yourself first with time, what I think about with that is like I spend time in the morning working on my education. So what do I want to be learning at the moment? Or what do I want to build? So I don't book out my morning with meetings. I'll have an afternoon for meetings because
Yeah.
that way, yeah, so pay yourself first with time and money. And then one thing we talked about before was like, hey, we need a combination of cash flow and we need to build net worth. So cash flow might be like, what can we, what skills, specialized skills can we do to give ourselves more leverage and increase our income or have multiple streams of income? So that's kind of like helps with our cash flow. But then we need to figure out what can we do to build our net worth. And this is like about what are we going to do, particularly on the investing side. One thing I've learned in investing is that success leaves clues, but winners take most. And so I've always been good at tech investing because I used to be a technical architect. I've always understood tech trends before 99% of people could see them. And
Yeah.
right now, there's the 80-20 principle, the Pareto principle. What's the 20% of things that are going to give 80% of results, right? And so at the moment, there's two big tech trends. And the first one is AI, and then the second one is Bitcoin, crypto, blockchain.
Yeah.
Okay. And then within those two big tech trends that are going to suck up all the money, what are the winners within those? So
Mm.
how I've done really well over the years is by like understanding what the big trends were, those two, and then understanding what the winners were within that, and then yeah, investing, but not just investing once, like doing what I call dollar cost averaging, just keep investing over time to yeah to build out a big portfolio over many years. So playing a long game rather than a short game, and that's resulted in yeah really life-changing money by doing that.
So are you saying you're not into get rich quick, Greg?
I'm not into get rich quick. I'd love it. Don't get me wrong. Like I love it when I get a good win, but I most people are like, how am I going to get rich this year? Whereas I think in multi-year cycles. So say for example, I do a lot of stuff in Bitcoin and crypto. It works in a 4-year cycle. And then by stringing together multiple of those where you've got money that's compounding, say for example, at 30% a year or 40% a year, over time it gets very crazy. I also think about multiple structures. So most people just think about, well, hey, I've got my superannuation. It's not really doing anything.
Mm.
I've got my personal. I could maybe invest a little bit there. What I do is I grow both. I grow my personal wealth, but also within superannuation, or for the international listeners, it might be called 401k, that
Yeah.
kind of thing. I took it over myself and did what's called self-managed super fund. Because what I noticed, my wife and I, we had was growing at like 10% a year. And we were doing these mutual funds and they had 6% fees. And then we had 3% inflation. And so I was like, hang on a second, we were growing at 1% a year and we did this for 10 years. So this was not very impressive at all. In some stages, it was actually going backwards, like our real wealth. So 10% is nothing to get excited about, particularly if you have those sorts of fees. So I then
Mm.
learned the difference between mutual funds and index funds. And a lot of people don't know this with investing. Well, so the first point is invest in your education, and if you can, take it over yourself because no one's going to care about your money more than you.
Yeah.
Then I learned about the difference between index funds and mutual funds. Mutual funds where you've got a, a fund manager or fund managers, and they're trying to buy and sell all the time for you to outperform the market. But what's happening is they're incurring all these fees along the way, and they're passing those fees on to you. So
Mm.
often they're giving like 4% fees, 5% fees, 6% fees. It doesn't sound like much, but what it's doing is it's killing your golden goose from
Mm.
growing. So what I then learned about was these index funds where instead of like them trying to outperform the market all the time, things like the S&P 500 index where they're buying once for you across those portfolio 500 and then they're selling once for you and you might have
Mm.
like 0.3% fees or 0.4% fees instead of 4 5 or 6% fees. What that means is that it's just growing so much faster with that compound annual growth rate. So that was kind of like a big thing for me. And then I really learned about what's happening with the governments and the printing of money. So all the governments around the world are pretty much broke. So if you look at the US government, they've got $37 trillion worth of debt. The Australian government has $1.3 trillion worth of debt. If you think about it like a credit card, it's like being overdrawn on your credit card and then what they do is they print more money to then pay off their debt.
Mm,
So what this causes is real inflation. And so that's why like everyone's house is going up, or you'll hear people, everyone feels like the cost of groceries, everything's gone up. And the reason why is this all comes back to what happened in the 1970s when real money got taken off the gold standard. It wasn't pegged to gold anymore. So governments around the world could just print whatever money they wanted. It
yeah.
didn't seem like a problem at the time, but now we've kind of got like a hangover from that. So one way I've really figured out how to get very wealthy as a business professional who's also an investor is to figure out what are hard assets. So hard assets means that they can't be just printed like money. So Bitcoin is one that I've done very well with. Gold and silver are other things that have very much of a limited capacity as far as to create more of them or to mine
Mm.
more of them. So as these governments around the world print more and more money, things with a limited cap like Bitcoin, gold, and silver are really, really going to do well. So that's kind of been like one of the core principles that I've learned along the way as well.
It's interesting you say that because I heard Robert Kiyosaki talking to, I think it might have been actually to Mark Boris on a
Oh yeah,
podcast a few, well, going back a few months actually, and he was talking a lot about silver and how he's buying and has continued to buy a lot of
yes,
silver just for that very reason.
absolutely.
Um,
It's got yeah, limited supply, hard for them to mine, and they're also using it in some electronics products as well. So
yeah, but he was also talking about how a lot of the inflationary conditions we're experiencing around the world are in direct proportion to the decisions that governments have made in response to various market conditions. But it's almost like it's just a snowball effect to the point where now they're trying to put in policies to restrict or improve the cost of living, or improve the cost of living for people, but they've caused it in the first place.
yeah,
So they said, we're going to cause this, but by the way, we're also your savior. So we're going to give you some, some incentives or something and expect people to say, oh, thank you so much for looking after us and so forth. So, I mean, this whole thing just points to the fact that you got to take responsibility for your own life, your own career, your own development, and your own business, really.
agreed. No one's coming along to save you. Yeah, I was waiting for a knight in shining armor to come along, ride along on a horse and come and pick me up and save me. I waited a long time and it didn't happen, so I thought, may as well back myself and make it happen.
Well, and it's a great point because you will see business owners out there and we see startups all the time, whether it be Silicon Valley or here in Australia, they build a pretty good foundational business, and then a big conglomerate comes in and buys them out, and they get lucky, right? But for every one of those, there's probably hundreds, if not thousands, that are still trying to develop momentum and get their ideas off the ground. One of the things that I was going to ask you in relation to all that is, and whether you're a business owner, whether you're a salesperson, whether you're a sales leader, apart from the stuff we've just spoken about, um, how do we tap into, I guess, this professional development and self-development? Now, again, it's not going to be advice necessarily. Go and read this book or attend that seminar, but you mentioned before that you pay yourself first in terms of obviously investing, but also time.
Yes.
So that's in dollars and time. A lot of people I talk to say, "Hey, Greg, you just don't understand. I don't have time. I simply don't have time. I don't have time to listen to a podcast, let alone to read a book, let alone to go and attend a course, let alone to go to a seminar." Right? What do you say to those people? Because I know, having spoken to a lot of wealthy people, they all share the same thing. They've got 24 hours in the day, but the way they use that 24 hours is completely different to the people who complain they've got no time.
Yeah. I've been in that trap, like I've got no time. But one thing I think is mornings are amazing. So if you've got no time, just get up an hour earlier and invest that in yourself, whether it's building a side hustle, whether it's being on YouTube, learning, that kind of thing. I think there's also a pay to play. So all along, I've been in masterminds or had coaches to fast track the learnings rather than, to
Mm,
figure everything else out myself. And then maximize the time as well. So say for example, Darren, you live an hour out of town. If you have to go in, you're running a workshop or whatever in the city, have the audio books or the podcasts, that kind of thing. So maximize the time that way. I think we've all got 24 hours in a day. Look at Elon Musk, how many companies he's running. So it's really just a question of priorities.
Yeah.
And in some ways, I think I'm too busy, but I'm too busy to not do this. Do you know what I mean? Like we have to prioritize learning this stuff and these skills because the future isn't bright if you don't do it.
Well, you'll be left behind because there'll be
Mm.
people that are probably coming up now learning stuff that even as early teenage years, learning stuff from a technological point of view that if we don't start to understand what is going on, will become potentially irrelevant.
Yes, yeah, particularly with AI, I think that whole thing's accelerating for sure.
So with that then, because there's also a plethora of choice, when you think about all the information that's available to us, whether you've got these little devices,
Yep.
or AI and things like that, we're sport for choice in that and certainly in a democracy such as Australia and the US, there's so many things we could be doing. Now, I'm sure, and I'm going to make an assumption you're on all the different social platforms and you see stuff being, depending on the algorithms, you'll get inundated with certain things. Just so you know, I'm getting inundated right now with military workouts. I'm not sure what that's trying to tell me, but I do this workout without having to go to the gym. Um, how do you, so the people that you work with, and even for your own perspective, how do you, I guess, cut through all the noise and all the choices that are out there to then really focus in on what are some things that's going to move the needle for me?
I think that's a great question. For everyone, the subconscious brain works like a heat-seeking missile, and the heat-seeking missile deals in exacts. So if a heat-seeking missile gets fired at a plane, and then the plane lets out flares, it's like a light and heat source, but the heat-seeking missile goes, "Did I hit a big heat source? No, I'll keep going. Did I hit a big heat source? No. Did I hit it? Boom, yes," and then it stops, right? Subconscious brain works the exact same way. So that's why I think for everyone, the most important thing is to be very, very crystal clear on where are you headed? Like, where do you want to be in 6 months' time, 1 year time, 3 years' time? Because if you don't know that piece, then it's really, really hard to know what to do next. And then, so say, for example, I know that I want to be a sales team leader or I want to have a side hustle or whatever it is, then what do I need to, the people that are doing really, really well in that, if I wanted to model them, copy them, what are they learning? And then how are they behaving? What are they doing? And so some of it can come back to like one thing that makes everything easier these days is personal brand. So, and I
Mm,
do get that not everyone wants to put themselves out on the internet, but the reality is, people buy from people they know, like, and trust. And so adding value to the world first, and it's particularly with the sales front. Like I've done a lot of like phone sales, Zoom sales, that kind of thing. If people know, like, and trust you, it makes everything easier, sort of
yeah.
thing. So yeah, investing in that. There's really just figuring out, hey, who's already done it before me, and then what are they learning, what are they doing, and then yeah, how can I model that and get there as quickly as possible, and ideally pay to play. So
Yeah.
go to a coach like yourself, or join a mastermind, get there quicker rather than trying to figure it all out yourself.
Because because there's so many avenues you could go down, and a lot of people, and coming back to what we kind of said before, that a lot of people are looking for the quick fix. And when you think about society today, whether it be just normal day-to-day life or even in business, it's almost like we expect an instant return on the investment that we make.
That's true.
And it's like, well, it's a slow burn. And you said dollar cost averaging over time, you can do that with dollars, but you can also do that with time. Investing in something that's going to help you become better, but getting really targeted on what is it that you want to achieve, but also who is it that you want to become. So I'm a big fan of people like Jim Rohn, who was always talking about success is not the accolades that you get when you reach it, it's the person you become, that you have the worthiness of being able to take care of the responsibility that comes with, I guess, the accolades that are bestowed upon you. So it's
Love
being
that.
really targeted and thinking about, well, who do you need to become? Because I say to sales leaders all the time, you can get great results, you can generate great wealth for the company that you're working for, but what you don't necessarily focus on, who do you become? Who are you? Who do you need to be today? So that's where the self-development comes in. And a lot of leaders don't know who they are. Because if you ask them, hey Greg, who are you and why do you do what you do? I'm staggered at the number of people that don't know.
Yeah. Wow. No, very, very powerful. And I think we've learned a lot of the similar stuff. I'd call that the old classics, like Jim Rohn. Yeah. All
Well,
this
it's just
new stuff's built on top of it, isn't it? So,
it's just wise, and
yeah.
it's not fire and brimstone. It's not Tony Robbins-esque, and although Jim Rohn was Tony Robbins's mentor.
Coach. Yeah.
But it's just when you think about it and when you look at it and when you read it and when you hear him speak, it's just fundamental common sense based principles that work because they're based on laws that are universal.
Absolutely.
Service. Um, so here's a question. People listening to this that are looking for, again, we're not giving financial advice here, but the path to generating wealth. Is there any, and we know we've talked about the cash flow quadrant.
Yeah.
It's continuing to add value, obviously. Are there specific things that you advise people who perhaps are starting out or don't know where to go to, right? And they might be susceptible because there's still a lot of charlatans out there, Greg, as you would know,
Yeah,
right?
that's true. Yeah.
How do we choose who to listen to? How do we choose the path potentially that will give us, I guess, the confidence to take the step forward?
I think one thing is if we go back to that, the 80/20. What are the two big industries in investing that are going to really make a difference? AI and then also the crypto blockchain area. And then if we can identify winners within that. So say for example, I've done very well from Bitcoin. I figured out Bitcoin and the limited supply and the global demand back in 2017. And a lot of people laughed at me along the way, how's your magical internet money going and all this kind of thing. But the number of people that laugh at me now for buying a lot of Bitcoin is low, sort of thing. But back in the day, it was very, very high. One thing is even just like, say, for example, if you figure that out, that, hey, Bitcoin, then just go deep down that rabbit hole and then see who you resonate with as far as
Mhm.
like learning that and backing yourself. And then within the AI space, learning about things like Tesla. Tesla's the leader in real world AI. They've just come out with the robo taxis, and then they've just come the Optimus robot, which is probably going to be the biggest product in the world, even bigger than the iPhone that's coming out next year. So just like learning about things like that, or Nvidia is another company to learn about because it does the GPUs for all the AI. So just going down the rabbit holes of some of those winners, and by researching them, I think you'll find whether it's podcasts or educators or you. I find you can learn a lot from YouTube, and I find a lot you can learn
Mhm.
a lot from podcasts, a lot from TikTok if you train your algorithm and search for those things. That's all I did, and also just being in masterminds or having
Yeah,
coaches nonstop.
I think that's great advice because there's no, and I'd be interested in your take on this in terms of, is there any such thing as a self-made person?
What do you mean by that? Self-made?
Self-made. Well, you hear people say, "Well, I'm a self-made entrepreneur. I'm a self-made this or a self-made that." But even when you look at the most successful people on the planet, whether that be a business person, a like an entrepreneur, a sports person, a singing artist, a performing individual, they always have people behind them. They always have, because you've said a number of times today the power of I guess proximity, and you didn't use the
Yeah.
word
Oh,
proximity, but it's the
yeah.
masterminds. It's who you connect with, who you can learn from,
Data
who you can
playing.
model
Yeah.
excellence from. Because I know you've done really, really well, but would you classify yourself as a self-made person, or would you attribute to the people who've made a contribution to you becoming who you are?
I would say a combination of the two. In that I'm self-made, in that no one was gonna do it for me.
Yep.
Like so, the buck ultimately stopped with me. But the coaches and mentors, and also the team members that have got me there, has really, really, made a massive, massive difference.
Mm,
And I think about so many things come down to leverage as well. One thing I learned, Aaron, was the more leverage that I had in my life, the more money that I made as well. And so I could get leverage from a whole bunch of different ways, and whether it was like content, so amplifying things, with the internet, leverage of labor, so having people, working for me, and then leverage of money, so using investment, that kind of thing,
mm,
And then, yeah, the other one was really the leverage of code. And that's why I'm a big believer in e-commerce and SaaS. So really the leverage has made the most difference. And the more leverage that I add in my life, the more kind of money and freedom that I'm getting over time.
Yeah. Yeah. Which you're the, I guess you're the catalyst for because you're at the center of all of it. But
Yes,
you need others that who have expertise who complement what you do or who bring diversity to what you do that enables you to, I guess, duplicate and also leverage.
for sure.
Yeah.
Love that.
Which is a great principle. So I guess the key message there is whether you're a sales leader right now, whether you're a budding entrepreneur, whether you're an individual contributor looking to further your career, start a side hustle, it all starts with you and it starts with a decision because you are the catalyst, but you can't do it purely on your own. You need to rely on others and you need to choose very carefully who you have around you in your inner sanctum. And that's the other key thing that I've learnt as well. Because there are a lot of people that would like to jump on the bandwagon and get a bit of a clip of the ticket, but they're not really a contributor to that. So be very careful who you surround yourself with.
100%. Couldn't agree more.
So, mate, as we wrap this up, it's been a phenomenal conversation. Looking forward, because there's lots of uncertainty in the world, whether it be financial markets going up and down, wars in different parts of the world, AI, all the conversations around technology. You looking forward based on what you've achieved and what you're currently doing, looking into the rest of 2025 and beyond. What are you really excited about? But what does perhaps have a little bit of an asterisk in terms of I need to keep a watching brief over?
I'm excited about sort of unlocking more freedoms and building that amazing life resume, whether it's like planning a couple of great trips a year or just doing fun stuff, having it in my diary, through the week. But how I'm unlocking that is by having multiple streams of income, as well as by building a big golden goose and constantly investing in myself. So, like, I don't go a single day without keeping learning, and developing, because I'm basically trying to get to the point where nothing can really mess with me. So whether
Mm.
I've got enough cash flow or multiple streams of income, or where I've built a big enough net worth that I could slow down, if I wanted to. Not that I want to like stop, but I think there's something to be said about the semi-retired lifestyle where you're working on things that interest you because I think you got to keep the brain ticking away, but getting past that survival component, and I think we would have all been there, business and life, there's those good times when it's all just flowing, and then you've got other times when it's just like all hands to the pump and
Yeah.
that kind of thing. So trying to get to the point where I don't have many of those disaster moments. Everything, yes, while life is going to have its ups and downs, you're constantly moving towards more security, more certainty, and
Mm.
unlocking more freedom and peace and happiness. Because what are we doing this for? Like we work really to unlock those things. And like I mentioned, I'm 50 now, so I really realize that in 20 years' time, I'm going to be 70. And while I may be doing things to try and keep as healthy as possible, I'm still going to be a 70-year-old man. So enjoy as much of it as possible right now.
But I'm sure it's still going to be surfing.
Yes, absolutely. Whatever the knees and everything still works, I'll be surfing.
All the salt water is apparently good for you, and the sea breeze and all that sort of stuff.
Agreed. And the grounding component, plus just the nature, like, yeah, we're seeing dolphins and whales and turtles and fish and all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. As long as you can avoid the sharks, I think, which could be counterintuitive. Yeah, you're
Well,
not.
hopefully you're a good swimmer. Well, and the key thing you as you were talking, I'm thinking something you said earlier in this conversation is I guess the power of the subconscious, and that's where the personal development and the constant reinforcing of what are the good principles to train and condition that subconscious, because that's ultimately what's going to be the barometer that's going to keep you on that journey, and being conscious of what that is and what you're feeding your subconscious is absolutely critical.
Yeah, we say you bring yourself to the deal. And so you see sometimes everything lines up and then the business owner or the sales professional business, they sabotage it themselves because of
Yes,
their own inner game. So
yes,
yeah, I
yeah.
think you and I are 100% consistent in that those softer skills, the mindset, the emotional intelligence, really, that's kind of where it's at. If you don't have that, very difficult.
Well, it's interesting. When I consult for some organizations and they ask, what sort of people and how do we bring good talent in? A lot of them tend to look for things like track record of sales, results, and stuff like that. And I said, no, you got to be really clear on what are the characteristics of the character that you
Ah,
want
yeah,
in a person, right?
yeah,
Because you
yeah,
can teach competency. You can't teach a lot of the characteristics that you're going to have in a good person. So, having a no dickhead policy is really important. But looking for what are the characteristics of the human that you want to bring in, and how does that characteristic either complement or bring diversity to the characteristics you already have in your team. So this is the other thing I've seen a lot of teams that become very one-dimensional because the leader attracts people who are very similar to them, and they wonder why they're not extracting the potential of their team. Is because the leader is actually the stopgap, they're
yeah.
the hindrance.
Barack Obama, the former president, he talks about, like find problem solvers. There's plenty of people that can come to you, hey, we've got this problem. But
Mm,
what about like more, hey, there's this problem, but don't worry about it. I'm going to own it and see it through. And I
mm,
think that kind of characteristic really, really helps no matter what work environment you're in. And the other thing that I thought of when you were talking about that was really like that resilience.
yeah.
And so many times through my career, I've got kicked in the guts and then just picked myself back up. Whereas I think a lot of people, oh, it got hard. I'm going to stop. I'm going to do something different. So I think just that ownership of like whatever it is, I'm just going to own it and drive it through as well as, hey, when it gets hard, yeah, I'm just going to, what do I need to do to keep going? Just keep going, just keep going.
Well, and you've said it multiple times. It's staying in the game. It's there's a great book called 3 Feet from Gold, and it's a parable. Yes, I know that, but it's people stop too quickly and too soon. If they just had gone a little bit further, that's where everything gets unlocked. So stay in the game.
Yeah, that's
Stay in
good.
the
I,
game.
I don't know that one. I'm going to check that out. 3 feet from
Yeah.
gold.
Um. So, Greg, great conversation. Really appreciate you jumping
Thank
on,
you.
particularly on a Friday. For people who want to know more about you and connect with you and learn more about what you do, where's the best place for them to get access to you?
I've got a whole bunch of free training online. So collective.com.au/class and then there's training there on growth hacking, so how to scale a company fast. There's biohacking, so how to slow down your aging. There's also training in there about like that sort of investor mindset and building wealth creation. I think that's the best free resource that I have online because it's about 4 hours worth of video training that can really
Nice,
help people move in the right direction.
nice. And I'll also, if it's okay, I'll put your LinkedIn handle in the show notes as well if people want to connect that way. Is that okay?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Awesome. I'll do that as well. Mate, fabulous conversation. It's always great to talk to people of like mind and somebody else specifically who has as well as organized bookshelf as mine. So I must commend you on that. And Greg Cassar, thank you so much for being a guest on the podcast. Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you, Darren, for having me. It's been my pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Exceptional Sales Leader podcast. I trust the information in this episode has been helpful in your journey towards becoming exceptional. And remember, please take the time to rate the show, subscribe to the show so other people can find it. But also, if I can help you, jump on my calendar, go to leadwithdarren.com and let's have a conversation about how I can help you along your journey to being exceptional.